Hello everyone, this is Brent Conway. I'm the Assistant Superintendent with the Pentucket Regional School District, and welcome back to our third podcast for our Teaching and Learning channel. We've had some great podcasts to start, but on top of that, we've been writing a blog for a couple of years talking about our teaching and learning and the skillful implementation of the high-quality curriculum that we use. And this month, through November, we finished November with a great blog that our occupational therapist wrote and contributed. And just over the weekend, it had phenomenal traction with lots of people checking in and reading. I think almost up to 2,000 people at this point. So today, we actually get to have our OTs with us to talk about handwriting with younger students and also its relation to early literacy skills. So I'm going to let them introduce themselves.
Sure. Hi, Brent. Thanks for having us. My name's Alex Warner. I am the OT at the Page School. I have been the OT there for a year and a half at this point. Last year was my first year. And I got my OT license 2 years ago almost.
Oh, my turn. I'm Cindy Carroll. I'm the occupational therapist at the Bagnell Elementary School, and I've been providing school-based OT for 24 years. I was a certified CODA, or certified assistant, for 14 years while working in the school. I got my master's, and I've been an OT for the past 13 years in the school.
Well, this is great. So we have one of our OT veterans in the district with us. And then we have someone who joined us just recently. And Alex, you shared with me something I think I forgot. You were actually a student in Pentucket as well, yeah?
I was a Pentucket grad, yep.
All right, so how does it feel to come back and work in the district?
Yeah, it's such a great community, it is. It's really wonderful.
Cool. And Cindy, you and I have had plenty of conversations over the years, and just talking about all sorts of things. And we'll get into some of those things today. I have to say, though, sitting across from occupational therapists makes me nervous. I truly say. So I know, right? So as a principal, when I was a principal prior to my current role, I remember sitting in IEP meetings, and when the occupational therapist would present their report, and they would begin to talk about some of the grasp that the child has and some of the other, and then I'm taking notes. I'm like, she's silently judging me. I just know I'm not doing, and I was in my head thinking about the way I hold things, and oh my gosh, yeah. So.
As long as you're functional, that's all that matters, right? That's all we look at.
That is
That's
true.
the kind of grasp you want.
Some might argue I am not very functional, but yeah. Anyways, so you've introduced yourself a little bit. Everyone sort of gets to know you. And additionally, you had one of your colleagues also contribute to the blog.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Melissa Gilbert, yes. She is the OT in Merrimack.
Yeah.
She's not feeling well.
Okay. Well.
She's join us, unfortunately.
All right. So you collaborated on this blog on handwriting, and what was one thing that you really wanted to make sure you included? And Cindy, we'll start with you then.
Sure. So I've been a huge advocate for handwriting curriculum for 24 years now, and how important it is for students to be taught to write, because they're not born with it, it's not intuitive, they need direction. As you know, I think this is our third year with the Handwriting Without Tears curriculum in the district. And
as a district-wide, I mean, it had been used in spots, but as a district-wide
Yes, it was
tool,
used, but it wasn't used throughout. And then when they all came to middle school, people had different variations of their handwriting. So district-wide, I think it's been great. Teachers are enjoying using it. The kids are engaged. They're more happy. I don't go in and see sad faces when they're tracing letters and not knowing what they're doing. And the frustration I don't see as much with handwriting since they've had Handwriting Without Tears in the classrooms.
Yeah. And that's our Tier 1 program, so that's what we're delivering to all the students.
Yes.
We do we start in preschool actually too.
Yes.
So preschool, kindergarten, and first grade is generally how it works. And then when students need more support, we use Handwriting Without Tears too?
Yeah, so I've always used Handwriting Without Tears, and it was kind of like a magic OT room. We'd take them out, we'd do Handwriting Without Tears, they'd go back. It was a lot of confusion for them. So it's nice that all kids can be included in doing handwriting without tears. But now, where it's in the district, I do a lot of co-teaching with the teachers. I go in, I'm able to say, hey, Johnny might need a pencil grasp, or in the moment, I'm there giving them suggestions so they can implement them without having to bring them for an evaluation. That's really not necessary because it's a quick fix.
Yeah.
So I've really enjoyed it, and I think the kids are really benefiting from that tier 1, getting them early, because that's when we want to mold those little hands and handwriting.
For sure. Alex, how about you? Something that you just, when we figured out this was the topic, right, and you were going to get a chance to do this, what was something you wanted to make sure was in there?
I feel like my mind jumped to a million different things all at once, and we ended up collaborating and discussing all of the things that we wanted to include. Something that I think about is all of the components of handwriting and how so much goes into handwriting that you might not necessarily think about at first glance. So it's not necessarily just fine and visual motor skills. There's also the executive functioning piece, there's cognition, there's attention, memory, the sensory aspect of writing. And so there are all of these different things that we need to look at if a child is having challenges with handwriting, and making sure that we're taking the whole child into account.
Yeah. So big stuff for sure, and there is a lot at play.
There is a lot at play.
Yeah. So, we think about kids who are learning something new, and you said for a lot of kids this is not an innate thing. Handwriting is not something that's natural. We have to be taught. We have to learn how to do it and practice it. And for some kids, it's a lot more practice and a lot more scaffolding than others, and other kids take to it fairly quickly. Right. But when kids are learning something new, oftentimes we think as teachers or parents or anyone who works with kids, that there's like this moment when things click for them. And we know we see it when reading, and all of a sudden kids feel like they can decode words, and they're getting that, they have figured out there's a code. So, and you remember those, and that they just sort of have those. Are there those moments in teaching kids handwriting, for instance, that you can think of that are they're so refreshing and rewarding for both the adults and the kids too?
Yeah, I can start. I think that one thing that I think about in terms of like a light bulb moment is once a student has a light bulb moment with handwriting, they are then really motivated to be able to continue to practice and to show what they know. So handwriting without tears is really great because it's a multi-sensory approach. So our younger kids it's their first introduction to handwriting, they're really motivated to like play the games and sing the songs and use all of the different multi-sensory aspects of handwriting without tears. Which of course, if they're motivated to work, then they're learning as they're working, and it makes just everything so much easier because they are motivated and they're excited to learn.
I see it all the time, the aha moments. It's, I'll be in the hallway and the kids will be all excited. They'll be dancing the Magic C and being so excited that we're doing, whatever Magic C letter. And the handwriting without tears, there's like 5 that they copy. They have to write themselves, and the last one, the teacher watches them write it. And I think it's a really good connection for teachers and students, because they're getting that one-on-one, building that little rapport. They're excited when the teacher's like giving them thumbs up, being very positive, excellent job, you went in the right direction, give a little smile. They just beam with excitement because they get that feedback from the teacher or myself or whoever else is in the classroom. It's really nice to see that they're enjoying it. And, and all children, they learn through play, and the multisensory, the movement and all that, they just really enjoy it.
Yeah, I think another thing that you mentioned about like the immediate feedback, the positive reinforcement, that's really important as well and motivating for the kids as they're writing.
Yeah. So shifting gears a little bit and thinking about the activities, the developmental nature of the activities, because we start doing some of this with preschoolers, but we're certainly not expecting preschoolers to write full sentences and to do that correctly. Thinking about the developmental nature of this and the development of the actual hand and the grasp, and those are some things we featured in the blog too.
Yes. Yep.
Talk to us a little bit about that, some insights around what that means.
Sure. There are different thoughts on it, but with handwriting without tears, they do use developmental, like pre-writing strokes, like just drawing shapes and lines and circles, and before even teaching them handwriting, because they need to be able to do those shapes to form uppercase or lowercase letters. Developmentally, teaching uppercase first is easier. There's less language. They feel success, and then they transition into lowercase, which starts in many different places. Motor planning, they have to turn directions, the sequence. There's a lot more involved, but they do it in a progression that the kids are developmentally ready for. So I just like using that developmental, I'm trying to think of the word, the developmental sequence to help them be successful.
I think there's and I stated something, so I contributed to the blog too, wrote a little bit, and I think there was something that I wrote that I'm not sure is actually 100% accurate.
I don't know if I read that.
And it's probably more the manner I wrote it. I think I wrote that there's volumes of research that support handwriting has a direct impact on students' orthography, ability to spell and write and so forth. And the reality is, when you really look at the research, there isn't actually a lot of research that states that directly. There's a fair amount of correlational evidence.
Yes.
And for students who develop sound handwriting mechanics, functional, as you referenced, Alex, right?
Yeah.
Functional, that it correlates with stronger academic outcomes in general, better spelling, better writing. But I don't know that research has quite been able to pin down whether or not it's actually causation, which is an interesting fact. So maybe I may have overstated or incorrectly stated it as it is, but it is critical to developmental,
It is, and I think it has a huge correlation. Again, I don't think they can pinpoint it unless they did a functional MRI.
Yeah, well, where they are at this point where they can do those things.
Yes, but just from my experience, I think there's a big correlation between, encoding and decoding.
Which is one of the things, and Alex, maybe, so when we've struggled with this too, so you reference, we teach all capital letters first because from a functional and a grasp standpoint, that's easier and more appropriate to do. But when we're teaching reading, we're using lowercase letters too, right? So when we're teaching kids handwriting, it's not always matching up initially in the sequence to how we're teaching kids to learn letters and sounds.
And that's okay.
It is okay. I think we as adults get really concerned that we're going to confuse kids. Mm-hmm. And reality is, as we move through like kindergarten, for instance, they are perfectly okay. Mm-hmm. And typically by about January, we've covered it all. We've done the phonemes, we've done the lowercase letters, uppercase letters, and we've done all the formations of the letters at that point. So, and the kids are okay. It's the adults that get worried about that stuff. Yeah.
I think that's true, because when we started the handwriting, a lot of teachers, it doesn't follow the same sequence that they teach, and I said, well, it's great you teach those sounds with those letters. They can identify using like a non-motor visual perceptual skills to identify these letters, but then when you're putting a motor component to it, developmentally is the way to go, the sequential order.
So any thoughts on grasp, Alex, and all of that?
Grasp. So this is one of those topics that I feel like everyone talks about pencil grasp and what the correct, I'm doing air quotes as I say correct pencil grasp should be. What we really look at is this grasp functional? There are all different kinds of grasps. We don't all do everything the same way. If we did, the world would be really boring. So everyone has a slightly different type of pencil grasp. We're really looking at, is the child able to write with this pencil grasp? Are they fatiguing too easily by using this pencil grasp? Then we might look at correcting the grasp. But it's really, if they're functional with that grasp, that is kind of the most important baseline that we look at.
Do you have to undo some things that sometimes parents, they want to get their kids writing and using writing instruments at a very, very early age because they think it's advanced, and then by doing it, the child actually isn't ready to hold a pen or a pencil or something like that? And like, what does that look like?
So I think that's a really important component to this, is really being aware of those developmental norms and how the hand does develop. Your hand is developing all the way up until you're 19 in some cases. And so if you think about that, we shouldn't be placing these expectations on kids to be doing things that are not developmentally appropriate. So really focusing on the fine motor milestones that are age appropriate, especially related to handwriting. We want to make it fun. We want to be working on pre-writing strokes in pre-K. Pre-K kids are not expected to be writing their letters or knowing their letters. And sometimes with the best intentions, if you are trying to help your children to develop, if you are introducing that concept too early, it can be detrimental to the students because they can get frustrated, and then it can become a non-preferred activity. So then when they're expected to do it in class, they almost panic. They say, oh my gosh, I don't want to write. And so just being really cognizant of what we can expect out of kids, what's appropriate developmentally, and really setting our expectations appropriately.
Yeah.
It's important.
So, in thinking about like at home and some of those things, we've had some discussions here at the middle high school actually about technology and its role and the implications of it, and even more recently on like ChatGTP and the AI platforms, and is that replacing some things? How do we use it effectively? I hear this from folks say like, well, how much time should we really spend on handwriting? When in reality, most of us just use a keyboard, or even now we're going to use speech to text or things like that, and that it's just not that important to teach it because technology is essentially replacing it. And we were laughing earlier about cursive, for instance, and we'll talk about cursive in a minute, but even to the point where I think advertisers are thinking differently about it, and it's Eddie Bauer literally just changed their logo because it was written in cursive, and they said people couldn't read it anymore, so they changed their logo. So, but talking about technology and the thought that technology is essentially replacing the need to teach and ensure students have handwriting down.
So, well, my thoughts is, keyboarding I think is a great resource for a lot of students, and it might only be certain students' only way to get their thoughts and ideas out. In regards to just going right to handwriting, to keyboarding without attempting to, teach, bring them through the developmental stages, see where they're at. Handwriting has so many more benefits than what people think. It creates many more pathways between both your brain hemispheres, sending connections back and forth. It helps with memory. Like when kids get older and they're writing notes for a test coming up, they'll have a better idea of remembering what the test is about, or remembering whatever the topic is, if they actually handwrite it, because typing is rote. It's you're just going through the motions. You're not really thinking about the topic. You're just kind of typing away. And it's not giving much thought to the information.
Yeah.
So they say the pen is mightier than the keyboard. I've read that many, many times.
OT words of wisdom.
And typing provides speed and things like that when they get into older grades, and if, it's good for research and multitasking, and when they get to that level, I personally think it should be the last thing, unless there's some barrier that they can't handwrite. Then, of course, it's a good tool for them. But
Sure.
I agree. And I think that it's not necessarily an either-or thing, like technology or handwriting. I think that there's space for both of them, especially in today's world, and that it's beneficial for students to learn both in order to access the curriculum. Like Cindy was saying, sometimes you are better off typing, and then sometimes you're better off handwriting. And so being able to really teach them the foundational skills when they're young, and then to continue to have them develop those skills as they get older, in order to be able to access both.
Yeah.
with the exception of if there are barriers that they
Correct.
Sure,
can't
sure.
handwrite, and that's a totally different story.
Yeah.
Right.
I think about like real young kids and all their time they have on devices, and without an actual keyboard, as I sit here with the computer in front of me, there's a keyboard with keys that you press, but for the most part, most kids before they come to school don't necessarily work on something that actually has a keyboard. It's
No.
either a phone device or an iPad-oriented device. Definitely not doing the same thing that you had thought, and I think we're going to see those kids also start using a lot more speech-to-text oriented things. They just talk into the TV remote now and ask it to come up rather than even using and working through that. So
It's instant for them too, and it's kind of sad in a way because they're not going through those developmental stages of play when they want to get their hands dirty, when we want them using different manipulatives and they're just swiping on the iPads or the iPhone. I had this little boy, he was 3, who came into preschool, and he just was trying to swipe a book to turn the page, and he was wondering why it wasn't moving. And I think that's a really important thing for parents to know, that play is still really important. And communication, not having so much technology that it takes away from those developmental sensory motor, sensory integration levels that they all should. I know they're going to look at the norms and see if they need to change after COVID, because so many kids were on technology.
I hadn't heard that.
Yeah, so
Wow.
because kids aren't meeting those milestones anymore, so they need
We can't have 50% of the population needing occupational therapy, sure.
Yes.
No, yeah, right.
So they are looking to change those. I just think people need to get back to just playing with different things, being outside, not being in front of a screen. I think screen has its time in school or whatever, but I think just the creativity with play, the imagination, there's so many things that
The technology just doesn't replace that, yeah.
it doesn't, no. But it has its place.
Yep, yeah. So one topic we did not discuss in the blog, and I did just reference it a little bit, about cursive versus printing. Because it's very interesting when you see research studies that talk about the impact, much like what I referenced earlier, the impact of handwriting on academic outcomes, and orthography for that matter. And certainly there is research that talks about students who write words out learn to spell better than those who just do it orally. Even though spelling is actually really an auditory process, there is that element of handwriting with the grapheme, the phoneme to grapheme. But there isn't a lot that distinguishes the difference between cursive and printing. At least I haven't seen much. So your own thoughts on that, both your professional thoughts and so forth around teaching kids cursive. And in full disclosure, we don't teach cursive right now in Pentucket. We use a printing program all the way up through first grade, and then we support it into second and third with those who need it. But we don't do cursive. It probably wasn't that long ago we still did, but we don't now.
I think your student
Alex,
When I was here, yes.
Yeah, you may have been one of the last.
I did.
Who was your teacher who taught you cursive? You must remember, right? Oh, now I'm putting you on the spot.
No, you are.
Yeah.
I want to say that it was my third grade teacher.
Yeah, it
Does
sounds
that
right.
make sense?
Third grade is
Was it
probably
Miss
when you...
Stokes. Miss Stokes is
Yeah.
my third grade teacher. She was wonderful.
Yes.
Yep.
And yes, I believe that's when I learned cursive.
Yeah. All right.
Don't quote me on that.
So what do we think?
I know that the research is it's not super clear on the effects of cursive versus handwriting. For me personally and anecdotally, I have seen cursive be successful with students who have challenges with handwriting, especially with visual spatial challenges. Cursive can help with spacing in between and within words if students are having a challenge, like if they're putting too much space in between the letters within a word. Cursive is connected, so they know where the spaces are supposed to be, and it makes it a little bit easier for them with that. It can also help with B and D reversals because all of the lowercase letters begin in the same place on the baseline. With letter formation and reversals, I have seen cursive be successful with some students.
I have as well. I've been around the block for a long time, so I was providing OT when cursive was taught in the school. I think it works on a whole bunch of different skills than printing does, and I think for some students it's very beneficial. They see it as a unit. They don't see it as like each individual letters. And I've had students that in the past that have had dyslexia that, worked on printing for years, and we just couldn't figure out what was going on. It just wasn't working for them. We switched to cursive, and it was like a miracle. Mm-hmm. They were off and writing paragraphs, and it was wonderful to see. It activates a different part of your brain, and it was easier for them to understand the fluidness of the one word than having to pick up. It was all like segmented mm-hmm. with the printing, and the cursive just really helped flow better for them.
Definitely. I think in addition to that, cursive can help with speed of handwriting. So mm-hmm. Cursive's faster because it is all connected, it is more fluid. And so if a student is having challenges with like the rate of their handwriting and keeping up with their peers in class, cursive can also be a useful tool.
Yeah.
Most definitely.
This is good. So any other parting thoughts you want to provide?
I'm super excited that Pentucket has adopted using handwriting without tears. I've seen great things teaching handwriting. I've seen the kids engage, and I've had a lot less referrals.
Well, you were one of the main reasons we are at this point. You helped us to make that decision, yeah.
Yes. I appreciate it.
Yeah, it was very good.
I think, we kind of touched on it earlier, but just looking at what is developmentally appropriate for kids and being able to build up their fine motor skills and their strength through play-based activities, especially at a young age, is really what is going to be the most beneficial for their handwriting skills, to support them in handwriting moving forward, as opposed to having them sit down and write their letters if it's not developmentally appropriate. So that's just one thing that I would like to be heard.
Yeah.
And I think it's important too. I see out in the stores, it's great that they have all the fun handwriting books, and people are giving it to their child at 2 or 3 years old, and they're all great intentions, but actually they're creating some bad habits, and so it's really important to kind of take a step back and just let them play. Mm-hmm. With all different kind of sensory tools, instead of putting a paper, a pen in their hand or a pencil and having them write letters, and just, developmentally at that age they're not ready. So. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Great. Well, this was fun, and it was nice to sit here for almost a half an hour and not feel like you were judging my penmanship. It's good. But we appreciate you both coming. We're very thankful for all the work you do, and your work is varied as well. Like, it's not just handwriting. I know everyone.
We look at the whole child.
I know. So the work of an occupational therapist extends well beyond just handwriting, for sure. But this topic just being the focus, and super appreciative. And
well, thank you for having us.
Thank you so much for having us.
Our pleasure. All right. Well, thanks very much. We look forward to the next episode, which will come out hopefully before we leave. We'll have one that come out in December, and we'll share the topic then. So thanks very much.
Thank you.